YouTube, what's going on, bruh? Oh my gosh, bro. I'm excited, bro. I'm so excited, bro. It's good to be back, bro. Like, I'm trying to contain it as much as I can, bro. But, bro, I just came up with an idea because, I'm so used to recording in my car. I'm on my girl spot right now. So don't trip on the Hello Kitty stuff in the back. The TV right there, you know what I'm saying? This her first spot. And then, she a girl, so I don't do Hello Kitty. But, her first spot, TV right there. We trying to get it together. Bunch of trash, but man, besides that, bro, how y'all doing, bro? I feel great, bro. Today, I can use a water bottle, but we ain't got no water in here. We gotta go get stuff, but man, I feel good, bro. God is good. I woke up read, prayed. I'm ready to get into a video, bro. Cracking it off, bro. We Mr. Ballin'. We gonna get into this one, and then we gonna get back to them SSM videos, man. So we gonna go ahead and like the Mr. Ballin' video right now. Let's get into it. This freaking ad. It's already a freaking ad. I should have let it play out. It is what it is, bro. Y'all gonna see it too.
Not sure how. Riverside's got you covered. First, go to riverside.com and open an account. And when you're ready to record, just hit the record button to capture high quality.
Today's two stories are about gruesome deaths that totally baffled everybody involved in investigating them. Now, at first, the cases did seem relatively simple, at least on the surface. But as investigators looked closer, what they found was really going on was completely out of this world. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 2, 3, even 4 times every week. So, if that's of interest to you, please offer to make the like button some trail mix. But don't tell them you've added a secret ingredient, chocolate-covered spiders. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories.
It's good to be back, bro. It's good to be back. I feel like I'm doing something productive, bro. I'm working.
One evening in 1890, a young man named Tadeo Fulgencio Mejia laid in bed inside of this big, expensive mansion that he'd recently bought in Guanajuato, Mexico. And Tadeo was feeling really miserable because he was sick with a fever. And so he rolled over and he let out this long, agonizing sigh, and then he heard his wife, Maria, come into the room. And he looked up and he saw that she had a cup of tea in her hand, and she walked over and she set it on his bedside table. And even though Tadeo, he really felt physically terrible, it was like the instant his wife was right next to him, taking care of him, just her presence, it made him smile. Now, Tadeo and Maria had actually only recently gotten married, but Tadeo was like head over heels in love with her. She was smart, she was fun, she was very caring, she was beautiful, and so far, their life together, despite it being relatively short so far, had gotten off to a really nice start. So Tadeo had not been born wealthy, but he had worked his way up to becoming a very successful mining engineer. And then after becoming very wealthy and successful, he had met Maria, fallen in love with her, they'd gotten engaged really quickly, and Tadeo had actually bought her this huge mansion they were in right now as a wedding present. And this mansion, this home, really was ideal for both of them, not just because it was a beautiful, grand home, but also because the town it was in, Guanajuato, was where Tadeo worked. And it was also where Maria's whole family lived, so it was perfect. Plus, the neighborhood was clean, it was quiet, it was safe, and the neighbors, for the most part, were all also upper-class professionals, just like Tadeo. So they fit right in. So for Tadeo, his amazing wife, his big house, and his nice neighborhood, those all felt like symbols of his great success. So, on this night, although Tadeo did obviously feel very sick, he also felt really proud and very satisfied with his life. And so right after his wife sat down next to him on the bed, Tadeo sat up, he smiled at her again, and he grabbed the tea she had brought for him, and he took a sip of it. And then Maria, she smiled back at him, but then she looked at him with an almost apologetic look on her face and said that, she did have to go right now, or she was going to be late for dinner with her family. And when she said this, Tadeo felt a little bit uneasy. So Maria went to her family's house for dinner a lot, since they lived walking distance away. But normally, Tadeo physically walked her there.
Okay.
Because to get to her family's house, Maria had to leave their safe neighborhood where they lived and pass along a couple of sketchier streets. And so Tadeo was always concerned that if she was
I already know where this going, bro. I already know where this going, man. Y'all like the video, man. I already know where it's going.
in those areas without him, that she might get mugged or attacked or something. She was vulnerable. But Tadeo clearly was just way too sick to walk her that night. And so he told her that he was really worried about her going alone, but Maria sort of brushed him off
Bro,
and said, you know,
my girl would have stayed. You finna stay home. I can't protect you when you finna walk in these dangerous streets. Your mama and daddy just have to understand that you can't stay. I mean, that you can't go. You can't eat within the night. It's too dangerous. If they don't understand that,
was going to be just fine. Then she leaned over, she gave him a kiss, and she said goodbye. And then she got up, she grabbed her handbag, and he watched her leave. A few hours later, Tadeo was still in bed, sort of half asleep, when he heard these sudden, frantic knocks at his front door that didn't stop. Somebody was banging on his door over and over again. And Tadeo's first thought was that it must be Maria. But Maria obviously had a key to their house, so he didn't know why she'd be knocking. But the knocking sounded so panicked that he immediately felt like something must be wrong here. So even though Tadeo was very groggy still and quite feverish, he leapt out of bed and rushed to the door and flung it open. But when he looked outside, he didn't see Maria. He saw a small group of his neighbors, and they all seemed really freaked out, like something had happened, clearly. And one of them actually looked at Tadeo with tears in her eyes, and she said that Tadeo needed to come with them. Just minutes later, Tadeo was led over to the entrance of this alleyway that was right outside of his nice, quiet neighborhood. And over here, there were all these people that had sort of swarmed around the entrance to this alleyway. And as soon as he got there, Tadeo could see that the alleyway itself was swarming with police. And so Tadeo, he pushed through the crowd because he's starting to panic, like, what's going on here? Where's Maria? He gets through the crowd and he looks into the alleyway. This is his first unobstructed view. And it's very clear that in the middle of the alleyway, something's on the ground. And when police sort of stepped out of the way, he could tell what was on the ground was his wife's body. Maria had been stabbed in the back.
Dang.
She was now lying face down on the pavement, surrounded by blood.
Dang.
Tadeo was so shocked and still so feverish that it's like he couldn't even process what he was seeing. I mean, it all seemed like this just had to be fake or something. Like, this can't be real. So when a police officer came over and asked Tadeo if he was the victim's husband, all Tadeo could do was just slowly nod and just stare at his wife's body. And then, you know, at some point the officer asked him, like, where were you tonight? Do you have any idea what happened to your wife? But Tadeo, it's like he was hearing these words, but just couldn't process it. And so he didn't say anything. He just continued to nod and just stared at his wife. Later that night, Tadeo was back at his home, just sitting on his couch in a total daze, just shivering. I mean, he was shivering from his fever, from the sweat that was all over his body, and he was also just shivering from coming down from having this huge surge of adrenaline after seeing his wife dead in the alleyway. But more than anything, he was just like frozen. I mean, he could barely remember even getting back to his house. And so now he just like sat there, like he had no idea what he was going to do. But eventually his body became so exhausted that he just shut down, he keeled over on the couch, and he just passed out right there. And at some point in the night, Tadeo began having this horrifying fever dream. In this dream, Tadeo was looking out the window from his living room, and he could see Maria. And she was stumbling down the road, and there was this huge trail of blood behind her, and she was screaming for Tadeo to help her. And then suddenly Tadeo woke back up again. Found himself sitting on the couch, and he sort of took stock of where he was. He realized that was just a dream, and then he realized he was drenched in sweat and his heart was racing. Like, that dream felt so real. But then as he was just sitting there in stunned silence, just sort of processing that that really was a dream, he heard something that...
Bro, like, how are you supposed to react to that? You know? Like, I don't know, dog. Imagine seeing your girl, dog, and you walk your girl every day through this dangerous neighborhood, and you see your girl, man, and she dead on the floor because that one time you couldn't walk with her. Wow, it'd be eating me alive, bro.
It gave him goosebumps. He could hear somewhere in the distance the sound of his wife's voice calling his name. Over the next few days, Tadeo's fever went away. But his fever dreams or his nightmares he was having about his wife calling out for him, those didn't stop. And every once in a while, when he would wake up from one of these horrible nightmares, he would again hear the sound of Maria calling to him. And it was like always so clear. He knows he's awake again. He knows he's not dreaming anymore, and he would hear her voice. He was certain it was her. But he could never tell where the sound of her voice was coming from after he would wake up from these dreams. He couldn't tell if she was calling from outside the house or inside the house, or if it was just in his own head. But it didn't matter. I mean, every time it felt so real. Like that was not a part of the dream. Man. That was real life, and it was terrifying. At the same time that Tadeo was grappling with the loss of his wife, and he's having these terrible nightmares, and he's trying to like pick the pieces of his life back up and put them back together, he also was going to the police to try to get more information about what happened to his wife. Like, what did they find in the alleyway? Like, who could have done this? What happened? But unfortunately, the police really hadn't learned much so far. They didn't know who did this. They hadn't found a murder weapon. And they told Tadeo that when they found his wife's body, she didn't have any personal belongings near her. And Tadeo said, well, she should have had her handbag. She left the house with her handbag. She should have had it with her. And so the police said, well, no, it wasn't there. So maybe what this is just a robbery gone wrong. And they took her purse and they killed her in the process. Now, Tadeo didn't doubt that that could have been what happened to his wife. Right. I mean, one of his chief fears about his wife walking alone in those sketchier neighborhoods was the fear that she might be attacked, she might be mugged. And so very likely that could have happened. But Tadeo wanted the police to fully investigate and figure out, like, who did this? Was it a robbery gone wrong? He wanted to know for sure who did it, find them, like, bring them to justice. He wanted answers. And the police were very committed to trying to get him those answers. But unfortunately, days turned into weeks, turned into months with no updates, and Tadeo was left feeling like, what's going to happen here? Have they forgotten about my wife? Like, is there just nothing? Like, is no one going to be held to account for what happened? And so after a few months of just relative silence and just feeling like he can't move on with his life without some sort of closure here, Tadeo found himself feeling overwhelmed by really three emotions. There was grief over the loss of his wife. There was anger at what he viewed was just ultimately police incompetence or police, laziness or deprioritization of his wife's case. And guilt, because in a way, he did feel responsible for his wife's death. If he had just sucked it up and, despite being sick, walked her to her family's house, maybe he could have protected her. Also, he thought about the fact that he was the one who bought this house. And so in virtue of putting her here, she had to walk that route to see her family. And so in that way as well, he jeopardized her safety. He sort of pushed her into the environment where she was killed. And so he was feeling really, really guilty. And so because of all these horrible feelings Tadeo was feeling, combined with still no word on who actually did this to his wife or why, Tadeo felt like he was basically losing his mind. He stopped going to work and instead just spent all hours basically sitting in his living room, staring out the window. It was like there was some part of him that thought if he just waited long enough, he would see Maria walking down the street towards him, calling out to him like he had seen her so many times in his nightmares, right out this window. And at the same time, Tadeo, more and more, was convinced he could hear the sound of Maria calling out to him, basically at all hours.
Oh no, I'm so
Whether
tired.
he had just come out of one of those awful nightmares, which he was still having, or if it was just the middle of the day and he's just sitting there looking out the window, like not asleep at all, he would still hear her voice. Didn't know if it was inside the house, outside, in his head, he didn't know. But it was like she was constantly on his mind, either because he was waiting to see her out the window or he was waiting to hear her. It was like all-consuming. Maria was the only thing he thought about. And eventually, Tadeo began to believe that the reason he was feeling the way he was feeling was not just overwhelming grief, like the dreams he was having, the nightmares, like hearing his wife calling to him at all hours and believing he was going to see her out this window, that wasn't grief. That in fact, it was his wife's spirit contacting him, that she was basically telling him that she cannot rest until her murder is solved. And Tadeo, when he realized that that was what was going on from his perspective, he realized that he had to take matters into his own hands.
Oh, Lord.
He needed, for the sake of his wife, to solve her murder so she could finally rest.
That boy finna go out there and commit a murder, man. That boy finna go outside and commit a murder. What y'all think he finna do? Y'all think he finna go, you know what I'm saying, bring the killer to justice? Or he gonna go get his revenge? Comment down below, man. Don't be scared. Like the video.
And so Tadeo, he retraced his wife's steps, he interviewed his neighbors, he searched all over town for a handbag.
Comment, revenge or justice? You let me know. I think it's revenge.
For the knife that was used to kill her. But despite how motivated he was to try to solve this thing and do right by his wife, he didn't uncover anything new. There was no new leads, no new evidence, no clues, nothing. It was one dead end after another. However, over the course of Tadeo's investigation into his wife's death, one thing did become increasingly clear, and that was Guanajuato was not nearly as safe as everybody thought. First, a drifter passing through Guanajuato was kidnapped. Now, nobody really connected this to Tadeo's wife's murder, at least not at first, because this person who went missing, they were never found. And so it was not really clear what happened to them, wasn't clear if they were killed, there was no clear overlaps between this person and Maria, and so at first it was just this thing that happened in Guanajuato and nobody connected it to Maria. But then, about a week after that person got kidnapped, another woman who lived on the outskirts of town, she disappeared. And then just days after that, another man went missing. Now, in each of these 3 new disappearances, none of them were found. They literally just disappeared, and that was it. Nobody knew what happened to them. But, as Tadeo is out there talking to people and trying to figure out what's going on with his wife, more and more people in town began to say, this is not a safe place. What if there's a serial killer on the loose here,
right,
and your wife could have been the first victim, and now they're refining their methods, and they're taking people away, and they're killing them, and they're not even being found. That was the consensus in town. And so Tadeo, he's hearing this new theory about a crazed killer from the people in town, and he's still continuing his own investigation, but it's basically going nowhere. The police are still not giving him anything. They're continuing their own investigation. They're hearing about this killer theory, but that's going nowhere. And so basically Tadeo didn't know what to do. He felt like there's a whole lot of things that could have happened, but nobody really knows. However, he wound up having a conversation with a very unlikely person just a few days after that third person went missing. And this conversation inspired a brand new approach for how Tadeo would figure out what happened to his wife. It was an extreme idea, one that he certainly hadn't thought of himself, but as soon as he heard it, he felt like, this is what I gotta do. The next day, Tadeo walked down a residential street in Guanajuato towards this sprawling, beautiful, expensive-looking home. His heart was racing, so to calm himself down, he put one hand into his pocket, and he felt the cold metal of the gun that he had brought along. So after his conversation the day before with this unlikely person,
Revenge.
Tadeo had completely changed his investigative approach. And now he was fully convinced that he was right on the cusp of finding his wife's killer, and that the answer was actually inside of this very expensive-looking home. That's why he brought the gun. And it was also why now he went up to this house and he turned the front doorknob.
He
found it was unlocked, just like he knew it would be. Then, without knocking or announcing himself at all, Tadeo walked inside of this house, he shut the door behind him, and he went directly to a staircase that led down to the basement. And standing at the top of these stairs, Tadeo felt a rush of conflicting emotions. He was so scared that he almost wanted to turn around and run out of the house. But he was also so grief-stricken and so desperate that he felt like this was the only way he would ever find the truth. So he took a deep, steadying breath, and then he walked down the stairs. And what Tadeo saw in the basement looked like a scene out of a horror movie.
That's crazy.
It was almost completely dark down there, except for some flickering light from a couple of tall black candles. On one side of the room, from what he could see, there was what appeared to be several mangled human bodies stacked up in a pile. And on the other side of the room was like this bizarre occult altar. And on this altar, there was a long knife, some kind of a book, like a spell book, and a chalice that was filled with human blood. And then also painted on the wall above this altar was a red pentagram that clearly had been drawn in blood as well.
The devil, boy. He always got something to do with it. We rebuke him in the name of Jesus. He tripping.
Tadeo, he just stood there for a moment, staring at the bodies, staring at the altar, the pentagram.
In the name of Jesus, man.
And it was just quiet for a moment. Then there was the sound of a single gunshot. It didn't take long for the police to show up at this beautiful residence after a neighbor had reported hearing that single gunshot coming from inside. Officers pounded on the door, and when nobody answered, they just went inside. And once inside, the police found the home was very quiet, very still. They looked around on the whole first floor, but they didn't see anything unusual. But then one of the officers found a staircase that led down to the basement. And so down they went. And when they reached the basement,
are they gonna see him and think he did it?
They saw the same horrible scene that Tadeo had. I mean, it basically is like this occult lair down there, complete with bodies and blood and altars and all this terrible stuff. But there was something else in the basement that the police saw that Tadeo did not. So it would turn out that when Tadeo began his own investigation into his wife's death, when he began hitting one roadblock after another, and he's not learning anything, and it just feels like one big dead end. Well, when that happened, he was so frustrated, but so determined to know what happened to his wife, that he turned to a local witch, and he asked them, hey, is there any way for me to contact the dead directly? Like, can I talk to my wife and have her just tell me who killed her? I have to know who killed her. Like, can you do that for me? She's already whispering to me. I'm already having these visions in my dreams of her. I know she's there. I just need some help. I got to have this conversation with her.
He's going to be talking to demons.
And the witch is like, I have just the thing. There's a ritual you can follow that if you follow all the steps exactly, you can have that interaction with your dead wife, and you can get the information you're seeking. And so the witch gives Tadeo this list of very specific instructions, which included human sacrifice. And Tadeo, he takes down all the instructions.
Bro, Tadeo finna look like the dude that was murdering people. Bro, don't tell me it's finna be a crazy twist where this man's sickness or something got him doing these things and he don't know. Bro, it's finna be crazy, bro. this getting good, bro. And no, you can't talk to demons, bro. I mean the dead. The living can't talk to the dead. That's a demon. She finna get him to bring and cast. And I think his wife, it might be his demon that he hearing as his wife.
And then he sets out trying to perform this ritual. He goes out and he kidnaps that drifter, the first person who went missing from town. Tadeo kidnapped them and did kill them for this ritual. But after following all the steps, Tadeo didn't get to talk to his wife. She didn't appear. She didn't tell him who murdered her.
He didn't?
So what does Tadeo do? He goes out and kidnaps somebody else in town. A woman on the outskirts of town. He kidnaps her. He kills her for ritual number 2.
Tadeo.
But again, despite following all the steps, he couldn't contact his wife. It didn't work. And so he goes out again. He kidnaps that man and he kills him. And he performs the ritual for a 3rd time and it still doesn't work.
Bro, this lady might be having him do something for her so she can create more blood sacrifices and get rewards for, or what was I was gonna say? Or damn, what was the other thing I was gonna say, bro? She might be. I think she the plot to it. Like how his wife died. I think she had something to do with it. You know what I'm saying? My theory is his wife died because her having another person believe that they can do something. But today will bring them back to the thing. So because he trying to do blood sacrifices. So I don't know, bro, but this is weird, bro. I think she definitely has something to do with it, I think. What's y'all think?
And so what does he do? A few days after that 3rd person disappeared and everybody in town is freaking out about a serial killer because there actually was one. It was Tadeo. He speaks to the witch again and says, hey, your instructions aren't working. What do I got to do to talk to my dead wife here? And the witch says, well, there's one other way you can perform this ritual. You can be the sacrifice. And Tadeo, he's thinking, this is pretty extreme, but I want to figure out what happened to my wife. And so Tadeo, the now known serial killer, wanders into his own house. His house was the big, beautiful house. Into the basement of his mansion where he was keeping the bodies of the people he was killing. And he had his ritual he performed on the altar. And he goes down there and he ritualistically kills himself
That's
in order
crazy.
to connect with his wife.
What?
And so he shoots himself and he dies. And then the police show up a little bit after. They come into the basement. They see this horrible scene. And what they saw that Tadeo didn't was his dead body in the middle of the floor. And so in the end, Tadeo literally became a murderer. He killed 3 people. He ended his own life, all in an effort to try to figure out what happened to his wife. And what happened to his wife is it actually was just random.
Damn.
It was a robbery gone wrong.
Damn. Damn. That's crazy.